I think when I did this talk last year, I called it the same name, Surviving and Thriving. But when I came to think of a name for this year, I thought it equally well applied to this year. And it's really about surviving the pandemic and some of the difficulties that were even before the pandemic, and then really turning that round and using the opportunities to really start thriving a little bit and make plans for the future. So I'm really pleased we're in that position. That's what I'm going to talk about. So I'm the chair of the Board of Trustees, so that just so that you know the difference, there's the Huntington's Association and the people who work and the salaried members of the association. They do all of the day-to-day work, and the role of the trustees is to steer the organisation and act as governors, really, and to look at the broader strategy of the organisation to make sure we're heading in the right direction and to support the team in delivering that for members. So I can change my slides. And as part of that, one of the things in our constitution, if you like, is that we have a 5-year strategy. We're just coming to the end of our last 5-year strategy, and we're agreeing on our next 5-year strategy, which will start from April 2023. Now, we've been working pretty hard at that over the last year particularly, and that work is sort of coming to fruition now, and we're putting the final bits into the strategy. So what have we done so far in terms of thinking about the strategy? And the answer is we've listened and we've talked and we've got together and we've discussed with a whole group of different people about what should be in it, what our priorities should be. So this is who we've consulted with and we're continuing to consult with. First of all, we've had meetings as trustees when we tried to work out, what might our priorities be. We've had meetings with members, also specifically with young people. We've also had meetings with staff. And the idea of those meetings were to say, what is it that we're doing? What is it that we might do? What's the direction we should be in? And what are our priorities? And we're hoping that towards the end of this year, we should have all of our priorities absolutely clear. And we'll spend the last couple of months before April deciding on how we're going to measure the outcomes of our priorities and the fine detail of it. But we've pretty much got to the stage where we've worked out the broad brush of it. I'm going to show you some of the things that we've been thinking and talking about. Obviously, our strategy isn't published, so it might look slightly different, but these are the things that are in the air for the strategy and also what our priorities are generally. So I'm just going to go through those one by one and give you a feel for it. I guess the first thing is about the Specialist Huntington's Advisory Service. We know that that's a sort of jewel in our crown, and that during pandemic, it was a chance for a lot of staff members to think about moving on, sometimes taking early retirement or thinking about their career options. So we did lose staff over the pandemic, and our first job is to get back up to capacity. We're not far off that now, but also to develop the SHDA service, particularly with a view to the things we can do face-to-face, but also the things we can do online. So that remains a big priority for us. Next, a big priority right now is cost of living. Now, obviously, we can't pay people's electricity bills for them, or at least not in almost every case. But what we can do is talk to the people who are making policy and to make sure that people with Huntington's disease and people with similar conditions aren't disadvantaged by any policies that are made, or that if there are policies to help with cost of living, that we're front and center of those, so that our members don't get disadvantaged in any way because of the real pressures that a lot of people are feeling in relation to cost of living. So that's a really big priority right now at the moment. I know it's always a problem, but it's a particular problem right now. And it's something that we're actively thinking about. Comes into a lot of our discussions. Another thing that comes into our discussions, and this has come really from the membership, is be able to get access to healthcare. And the one thing that comes up when you talk to members a lot of the time is getting access to mental health care. And that might be counselling, psychological therapy sort of healthcare to do with adjusting to new situations and circumstances. But it's also healthcare, mental health care for people who have serious mental illnesses in relation to their Huntington's disease. And often many people have had the experience that if you have Huntington's disease and you have a mental illness and you go to a routine psychiatry service, you may get turned away on the grounds of, somebody might say, well, it's not a mental illness, it's a physical illness. And I think one of our jobs is to challenge that form of discrimination. And we're thinking of ways in which we can do that at the moment, so that if you have a serious mental condition in relation to your Huntington's disease, you've got equal rights to access all of the full range of mental health care services that you might need. So that's a big bit of work and something we've talked about a lot, and it's come up directly from the membership who are concerned about that. Next thing is access to new treatments. And as you know, I would say that's been a roller coaster in the sense of there's been some, potential disease modified treatments that have come to the fore. And then we've had 2 or 3 disappointments in terms of outcome. And then we've had new hope and new products coming along in the pipeline. I guess the first thing to say is that sort of roller coaster of hope and hope going away and then a bit of hope coming back again is very typical for research into a variety of illnesses, but it's quite difficult to live with every day, and I really recognise that. And one of the jobs of the association is to give you the most accurate information in the most sober and considered way possible, without any hype. And we take that responsibility really, really seriously. But also, I think, despite the ups and downs, we're in a very, very different position to how we were 5 years ago, in the sense of there are a bunch of treatments now that can reliably reduce the Huntingtin protein in people's brains. At the moment, we can't do it safely, and that's where the problem lies. That's a completely different set of problems to the ones we had even 5 years ago. And now I think at the last count, there were 25 companies with products in the pipeline for Huntington's disease that are being researched on. And those 25 companies really need the association. And Kath will tell you, she's commonly getting rung up by companies going, can we work with you? So our job is to make sure that if any drug comes onto the market or gets licensed for Huntington's disease, that any of our members and any people with Huntington's disease who could potentially benefit from them would get absolute access to them. That seems like a no-brainer on the face of it, but actually there's a lot of hurdles to be jumped through to get to that. So I guess it's a new thing we're having to do as an organisation, is to think how best we can get ourselves in shape for any effective treatments that get licensed, so that if they get licensed, people will get access to them. The other group of people that come into that equation are you, the members, because that's something that you're going to have to learn about too, because we rely on your voice through your MPs and through your other representatives to make sure that our voice is being heard. I think one of the jobs of the association is to make sure you have all the information and tools you need to do that as effectively as possible. Right, so that's a big new area for us, and it takes a lot of time. Kath will be the first to tell you that it's taken quite a lot of her time, and it's a steep learning curve. Okay, next, virtual support. I guess we've come to virtual support really through pandemic, because we weren't really doing very much of it outside of telephones before pandemic. And I've realised after COVID that there's actually a lot of good that can be done virtually for people with HD and their families who are spread out throughout the UK. It's not a substitute for face-to-face contact, but it's a really good addition to that, or an adjunct to that. And I think developing what we do virtually to support people with HD and families, but also, as Kath mentioned, to support professionals and really educate people. I think that's going to be part of our strategy. A priority for us is to develop what we're doing virtually. So it's absolutely targeting the people we need to with the stuff that they really need. Okay, quick time check, but we're doing fine. I think another thing that's come up through our asking people really is developing the support we can offer children and young people. And of course, we're developing the service for young people with HD, but we've also been communicating with young people with HD or from HD families to find out what they want. But I'm not going to speak too much about that because Chloe Holmes she's got a special slot when she's going to talk about the consultations we've done with children and young people and how we hope to take that forward with a strategy. I think this is a really important bit of our strategy, and the trustees are all very supportive of this as part of a priority for the organisation. Okay, another pointer for the future is developing volunteers, and that isn't something we've done much of in the past, but of course volunteers are an untapped resource for many charities and should be for us. So I would imagine it will be a part of our strategy that we'll be thinking about how to get volunteers on board, how to use them in the best way possible. So that's another exciting development. We're developing our package education for health and social care workers, and particularly that's happening virtually, but Kath's already talked about what we've done so far, and I guess the strategy will be about developing that in the future and really targeting it at the people who would most benefit from it. And then finally, I would say we took some good decisions during lockdown, thanks to the management team and to the executive board. And so we're in pretty good financial shape at the moment. That's also thanks to our fundraisers who have done a cracking job. And of course, we can't do anything without money because money pays for people to do things. But right now, we're in pretty good financial shape, and we're prepared for the future challenges. So I'm hoping, the plan is we're in good financial shape. We'll get our strategy finished off, published next April, and then we can set sail for the next 5 years in good fettle. So that is the end of my talk.